Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon or good evening now, everybody. Welcome for the first semester workshops or series of workshops, actually. Hopefully, most of these workshops for this year are new. For example, this first workshop, how to generate arguments or strong arguments for academic writing or in writing in general. This is to be presented for the first time, and a lot of people suggested this last semester. This workshop is going to be presented by an expert in e-learning, in artificial intelligence, Blackboard, etc. Dr. Ibrahim Garba is a digital transformation leadership and human capital developer hailing from the United Kingdom with a strong background in policy analysis for strategic planning. Dr. Ibrahim has proven expertise in the field of linguistics. Currently, Dr. Ibrahim is serving as a trainer at King Abdulaziz University. I myself attended a lot of his outstanding workshops. Dr. Ibrahim specializes in blended learning and e-learning as well. His profile is distinguished by practical and reflective research on the application of learning theories within the academic setting. With a keen interest in the field, Dr. Ibrahim's work focuses on the integration of learning theories to optimize educational outcomes in the 21st century. His career has spanned over the last 25 years within the Middle East region. The floor is yours, Dr. Ibrahim, and
Thank
I
you so
wish
much.
a good stay and good watching and listening. And thank you for your interaction in advance. Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim.
Thank you
The
so
floor
much.
is yours.
Thank you so much.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
so I'm so happy to be presenting here for the uh, Writing Center at the English Language Institute. Um, we've been trying to do something together with Dr. Kamal, and it was this semester that we managed to uh, come onto this particular platform. So a little bit about me before I present my discussion on academic writing today. This is me, and I think Dr. Kamal just went through this profile of me. And if you want any more information, because I'm also a colleague like yours, or if you're a student, I'm also one of the teachers here at the university. So I'm at the Applied College, so we can always meet there if you like. The discussion today is going to be about how to generate arguments for academic writing. We know as teachers that our students sometimes, when we present them with the topics to write about, they sometimes have some kind of difficulty generating the ideas. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in at the top level and also from the bottom level. So in between the discussion, I can pause and we can talk and share information because I doubt I know everything. I know some things, and I know that sometimes our students are challenged. So the way I might perceive it might be different from yours, and our discussion will also will contribute towards improving how students can generate their arguments for academic writing. So I'm assuming two things in my presentation. I'm assuming that this is going to be for students, and it's also going to be useful for those who want to take on some kind of academic writing for scientific research. The reason why I'm making these two assumptions is because writing from the academy has a lot of it comes with a lot of baggages. It comes with a lot of assumptions. um, when you write an essay, there are standards that you need to meet, so it's not just writing and then you just produce it and share it with your teacher and everything is ready. It's more than that. Let me come to the class. I think I hear someone raising their hands. uh, so if there are any things, okay, somebody's logged out. So I'm going to assume that if you have any questions, you can interrupt me if you like, or let me know by talking to me. So please, no raising of the hands in the classroom because I won't be able to see it. I'm going to be focusing on the presentation now. Okay, so forgive me for that. Now, We've just gone through the welcome, so let me introduce the topic here today. So the presentation is about how to generate effective arguments for academic writing. So you want to write, and you want to be able to generate the ideas, and you want to be able to come up with something that will help you to argue your ideas. And we know that arguments in in academia, it doesn't mean two people having a having a go at each other. It's about presenting the ideas in a certain way. So in this session, what we're going to do is explore some of these strategies that will help you develop your arguments in a very compelling way. Because as I said, we're talking about academic work. Um, I'm going to use some principles to guide what I'm going to present today. And I hope, inshallah, they will also be the foundation for the rest of the workshop that we will have throughout the semester, because our activities are going to be sort of like complementing each other. Uh, so, oh, okay, sure, yes, I got that, I got that. I will speak slower. So, when we talk about uh, writing for academia, for the academic world, we have to assume that there are some things that guide this writing. So I'm going to look at 5 of these principles that will help us lay the foundation for our discussion. The reason is because it's useful for us to look at writing and read what we need to read carefully to help us understand what we are uh, going to write about. So when we look at this semester and all the academic uh, writing or things leading towards academic writing that we will be talking about this semester, I'm trying to set the foundation for this. So I'm not just going to be uh, presenting my discussion, I'm also laying the foundation for the rest of the semester's work. So um, as I said, there are 5 things that will guide my presentation today. So if there's anything you can take, it's these 5 principles to begin with. The first one is critical thinking. And some of the researchers, like Olson, mentioned that writing promotes critical thinking. So when the students want to write about any idea, and for their assignments, for example, by presenting them with tasks that lead to writing, we are also encouraging them to think critically. It is important for our students to be able to include critical thinking within their academic studies. So it's not just about teaching English or studying English or writing in English, it's everything, because writing improves their thinking. And critical thinking is something that is very much needed today, not just at King Abdulaziz University, all over the world. Olson, for example, is not a student or a teacher at King Abdulaziz University, but I agree with his idea that since 1984, students' thinking improves when they start to write about the ideas that they're doing. And when you think about it, writing itself has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So when the student wants to write about something at the beginning, or the middle, or the end, they have to keep looking at what they're writing from the beginning or the middle and keep moving from different parts of the writing. So Appleby, for example, also states that when students or the person writing moves back and forth, then what they're doing is they're looking at writing as if it's a process. So when you are presenting your ideas, before you can say, I am finished, I am done, you have to continuously check what you are writing. Um, one of the things that I notice is when I'm working with colleagues, for example, it could be a simple thing, as a simple assignment. And you could be asked to write a report, you could be asked to do anything. And when you present it, it's always looked as if it's done. Okay, since it's done, it should be perfect. Nothing is perfect when you're talking about writing. It's a continuous refinement of some piece of document that is done multiple times until you're happy. So if you look at writing as a process, this is a very important part of getting your uh, foot into improving your argument. You see, so you're not looking at writing like, okay, I've written it, khalas, it's finished. I'm done. No, there are stages you have to go through when you're writing, and to accept this, you must accept that writing is a process. So this is the second major principle. The third one is the organization of what we write, and you can see that. Um, yes, go ahead. Somebody has a question. If you have a question, go ahead. If you want to ask a question, okay. Uh, I will continue. I assume that was the that was an accident. Okay, so Newton again back in 1985. If you notice, my citations are always like pretty old because some of these ideas are accepted within the uh, English language sort of like discipline. So one of these ideas is to emphasize that writers need to produce work which is logical in its approach to the process. So you need to be able to structure your arguments so that it makes sense. You can't just start talking about examples without discussing what the example will highlight. You can't go into comparing things without talking about why you need to compare things. So there's some sort of order and structure in how we discuss. And this comes back to the issue of, how to present your arguments effectively, because if you don't logically present the first argument and then the second argument and then the third argument, the person reading might find it difficult to understand what you're doing. So uh, the fourth one is to analyze and evaluate the ideas. So if I understand that as a writer, I need to actually um, take the things that I need to write into small pieces and then think about whether I want to accept them. This will help me to analyze and evaluate the ideas. So uh, we have someone like Jamil, for example, who argues that writing helps students to think at a very higher order of thinking, higher order level of thinking. This means that they have a very high cognitive understanding or thinking. Is the word thinking here. So because they have to think about how to analyze and evaluate ideas, which means that writing can help students with thinking from a lower level to a higher level. Um, when you are writing, you must think about the ideas that you want to accept or reject, and then this comes back to what I said about critical thinking, which is something that is very important when we are looking at academic writing. So we talk about analyzing, we talk about evaluating. If you remember Bloom, this is something that we're familiar with. And in terms of higher order thinking skills, Bloom has some sort of like hierarchy of these, or taxonomy of ideas, which provides a framework that we all use. So our course books, NCAA, which is the national accreditation that examines us sometimes. If you're teaching medicine, if you're in engineering or business, whatever it is, nursing, uh, whatever course you're taking, you will find that Bloom gives you the ability to understand how to move or shift from one level of competence to another. And these usually go from a lower level to a higher level. So, for example, it's easy to remember something, but when you're recalling information, that's quite different from, let's say, uh, using information. So, what Bloom is saying here is, which is the fifth principle that I'm using for our presentation here. What he's saying is that we need to move from the lower level to a higher level of thinking to be able to improve our academic writing skills. So let's jump into it to understand what is it that we need when we want to write. The first one, of course, is to understand who we're writing about, or who's going to read our work. Sorry. Um, there's a very famous thing that I saw recently, which was, when I write, I have to remember that someone will read what I write. So be merciful to your reader. What does it mean to be merciful? It means don't just write everything you think you understand. Write it so that the reader can understand, what you're writing about. So, to create a powerful argument, to create something that's compelling, you have to remember that the person who's going to read it needs to accept what you're saying. So, what is the interest of the person? What are the beliefs of the person? This is where they all come in. So that when you write your argument, you need to be able to say, oh, okay, this will appeal, or this will be attractive, or this will address the concerns of my audience. So it could be an assignment that you have to write. And if it's an assignment, your teacher's going to read it. So you have to remember to write using the things that your teacher has taught you. If you write for academia, for journals or publications, one of the first criteria is to check what are the requirements before you start writing, because your audience is the journal, your audience is the teacher, your audience is maybe another student. So you need to be sure you understand who your audience is. So for example, I want to understand who my audiences are. What I can do is to write a questionnaire, and through a questionnaire or survey, I can target them and ask them questions to draw out what they need. So, one of my friends, he's studying in America, Abdurrahman, and he called me and we had a conversation for about an hour, because he's doing a survey, and if after he's done the survey, he's going to write, some questions that he's going to use for an interview. So he did some sort of background check to make sure that the items he includes are useful for the people he's going to interview. And it works in the other way also. Before you do the interview, maybe you want to check and make sure that the people you're going to interview agree with the questions you're going to ask them. So a while back, I did an interview with some of my colleagues, and before I started writing, or before I started asking them questions, I did a little pilot test of the questions. Similarly, if you want to write a book, or you want to publish something, the first thing you do is you do a little, research on who's going to read this particular material. So, uh, doing a survey helps you to check that your audience understands what you're doing. The next point I want to highlight is the definition of what you're asking about. How do you define your research question? So the idea here is to be able to, excuse me, get a clear understanding of what you want to ask. uh, I haven't spoken in a while, excuse me. Um, it's different when you're on the microphone and the students are not watching, so bear with me, please. Okay, so I'm at the second bullet point here, which is a well-defined question will guide your argumentation. So this is like having a good question will help you know what kind of information you need. Uh, excuse me. For our students, usually we give them prompts. Write 200 words, write 20 words, write a paragraph, and this is the question defined for them. But sometimes you don't have this, and you have to create your own questions. And it's useful to be able to stay focused using your questions to guide you in before you write anything. So you have to make sure that the questions you're asking are relevant and thought-provoking for the person who's going to read it. So this is very important to be able to define the questions and the content. Excuse me. I have a few examples here, which is to do with how you identify the questions and the characteristics that make a question very good. So we have two questions here, and uh, what I want to ask you is, let me get my pen ready. Oops, sorry. Here's my pen. So this is number one, and this could be number two. So I'm going to come to the classroom in Blackboard, and uh, and I will see if I can create some questions here to ask everyone in the classroom. if you can type which is a good question. Is it number one or number two? So in the chat, I want you all to either type number one or number two. Number one is a good question, or number two is a good question. Which one do you think is a good question? All right. So everyone's someone's got two there. Zainab is trying to just break the rhythm. Very good. So it's Mona. Thank you very much. Forgive me, I've got this little cough here. Okay, very good. I think most of you, mashallah, are proficient writers. Thank you very much. So that was a very good exercise. Most people suggest that the first one is a good question to ask. Turkey has his hands up. Yes, Turkey. Do you have a question, Turkey? Okay. So I'll assume that I was just okay. Most of you suggest that the first one is the correct is the a good question to ask. How does the consumption of sugary beverages among teenagers impact their risk of developing type 2 diabetes? Okay, so I'm talking about diabetes, sorry. And what are sugary drinks and their effects? Well, if you ask me, if I analyze this and I want to think about which one is clear, which one is specific, which one is relevant, and which one is also thought provoking for my audience, I would also say that it's the first one also. The reason is because a good question needs to be clear, specific, relevant, and thought-provoking, as I explained here also. So we have the clarity from the understanding that we're talking about teenagers here. This is the particular people we're talking about who drink sugary beverages, and in terms of the outcomes also, and what I want to test in terms of consumption and maybe type 2 diabetes, these are kind of like variables to think about. It's also specific. We're not talking about any kind of drink here. We're talking about sugary beverages, and it's relevant also. Because there's a sort of like a connection between teenagers and type 2 diabetes and sugary drinks. These days because of the health concerns these days. Um, I believe if you look at Saudi Arabia today, you'll find that there's a huge difference in terms of the content, the sugary content in drinks. So you don't even have to be like a researcher. When you buy something from Al Marai, these normal juice or even Pepsi, they've reduced the sugar content. So there's a huge awareness here among people, not just teenagers. So narrowing it down to teenagers tells you the particular uh, group that we're looking at here. It's also very relevant to that group, and it's thought provoking, I believe. The question is quite interesting because it makes you want to investigate this. So, the question you ask should be something that's kind of also motivating for you. Do you want to do this or not? Because if you ask a very general question like this one here, it's not very clear. Who is going to drink it? Who are we talking about? Sugary drinks, their effects. It's so wide. You can't research everything about this. Um, when you start reading the literature also, or when you start reading about it, you'll find that there's just your mind will not have anything to control it. You're just reading too much into it. It's not very clear, basically. It's not specific because it doesn't talk about the population that we're interested in. It's also not relevant to them because there's just no specific goal. There's no what is the problem here? Or what are sugary drinks and their effects on what? It's not thought provoking also because when you go on this path, the road will open so wide, you wouldn't know where to begin. So it's a poor question to ask if you ask me. But if you ask a good question, it should lead you to start thinking about how to gather the evidence and the content. So in academic writing, one of the things that is very, very important is the proof. They say in English, the proof when you cook or something like that, or when you bake, uh, they say the proof is in the pudding. So or sometimes the proof of the pudding is in the eating, right? So what is the proof? What is the evidence to suggest that your argument is sound, or is supported? You need evidence, and to collect the evidence needs something, uh, or a source that will allow you to say, oh yeah, this information that I got is from the library, this information I got is from the course book or the textbook. That's why we also use course books. If you are a student in this particular session today, we use a lot of course books to teach you, because these course books are reliable. They have information that we can use to teach you. And if you notice, sometimes we change our course books, we update it because there's something that's better. Some of us read journals. Some of us actually go out of our way to, in the library, for example, mashallah, at King Abdulaziz University Library, we have an amazing database that's linked to some of these uh, international databases. So you can actually find access to many journals, but you have to go to the library. You have to go and actually dig and ask, where can I get this information from? So, uh, what are you looking for? You will always be able to find it. So you need to be able to know that the information is also up to date and it's connected to the topic. Because if you look at, for example, the pandemic today, it's allowed us to become more digital than ever before. I can't remember the last time I picked up a book and read it. To be honest with you, I'm either reading from my computer or reading on my phone or reading on my tablet. But to actually pick up a journal and read it, it's been such a long time. I can't remember when I did that. So uh, it's so easy to get access to up-to-date information today. You just narrow things down by the date when you're searching for something on Google Scholar, which comes back to the sources of information that I want to talk about here. So I have access to the KAU library, my university, Liverpool in UK. I get access to journals, so we have Sage, Taylor, Francis. You have so many different uh, uh, things that you can use to improve your reading. So if you're a student, you don't need to read your course books only. You can go to the library and you'll find that there are many sources of information for you. We have journals, we have Google Scholar, we have Scopus. You can also look at the source of the information, check the chain. Some of the five authors that I mentioned to you uh, come from a chain. So if you look at the date, I looked at 1984 because I wanted to to talk about critical thinking, to show you that it's an old thing. It's not new, and it's established. But between 1984 and today, so much has gone on, uh, and the authors also. Who's talking about the information? You know, I'm here talking to you about how to write arguments. The first thing Dr. Kamal did was to introduce me as someone who's got this particular credentials, and therefore I can talk about the topic. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but what I'm saying is, on any topic that you choose, there are people who are established in that particular field, and we know them. And the more you read, the more they become familiar to you. So anyone you talk to, anyone who reads your work, because you're including those particular authors, will say your evidence is sound. You backed up your work with the right evidence. So here's something which is particularly relevant to critical thinking that I want to touch on, because when you imagine you have your topics, and I will use X here. This is my topic, and I have these points that I want to make, but I need something to show me how they are connected to this X here. How is number one, number two, and number three connected? See, this little visual that I've just shown you here, this is what we call a concept map. So it means I take an idea and I turn it upside down, I turn it inside out, and I use some kind of graphical display to show the relationship, the connection between the ideas. This is a very cognitive sort of like way of thinking, because It's to do with how you think the ideas are connected. And it helps you to organize your thoughts so that when you make a new idea, or when you want to disagree with someone, or when you want to agree with someone, or even when you just want to just show that you have the right evidence, it's coming from this particular source, you are systematic in how you approach your work. So the important thing about concept maps is they help you to look at your main topic or your research question and look at the ideas that are central to what you are talking about. So for example, X is my topic, and I have one, two, three. But then I also have four. But four is not connected to the topic. It's not connected to three, but maybe it's connected to one. So using the map will allow me to be able to say, to show how they are connected. One of the things that we need to encourage our students to do is to write. Obviously, right? I go into the classroom most of the time. My students don't write, so I have to encourage them to get a notebook. Don't rely on your memory, because your memory, you need it for driving in Jeddah. If any of you live in Jeddah, you know that driving in Jeddah requires a lot of cognitive skills. So you need to relax your brain sometimes. You need to write things down and forget about it, and then come back to it later, right? So mapping things out graphically, showing the representation of your ideas and how they relate to your topic, how they relate to your research question, is one of the most fundamental, basic things that any student or any professor would encourage you to adopt to improve your writing. I want to focus on using the concept map a little bit here. And the first thing is to remember that you create the concept maps because you want to uh, improve your writing. So let's look at the benefits of exercising, for example. So this is the topic that we want to talk about here. So this is my topic, and I will put that right at the center of my map, and then I will have some different sort of like branches coming out. So I could have something that will be related to physical health. I could have something related to mental well-being, or maybe social interaction. So these 3 points will be what the ideas that I want to talk about here in my writing. So whatever the topic is, you can write it down on a piece of paper and let it be in the center of the paper, and then you make a circle if you like, or you can use lines to show what you want to talk about afterwards. So from expanding on the subtopics or the arguments, this is where you will see that your writing has become richer, or has become more relevant, because relevancy is a very, very important thing in academia. So uh, as I said, the advantages of using the concept map is it gives you the visual representation of your ideas. It makes you very creative. And remember, creativity is the sort of like highest level of the uh, sort of higher. It requires you to use some higher order thinking skills here. It allows you to focus also. So you're not just talking about things that are, yeah, everybody says that, I mean, you're not doing that. You are being relevant and focused. And what it does is it allows you to be efficient when you revise your work, because you have already focused on the important things that you need to talk about. And now when you're revising your work, you do it so quickly. It could be like spelling. You know what I mean? You're looking at how you spelled the work. Maybe you're looking at punctuation. These are very minor things to talk about or think about when you are revising your work, as opposed to this, why are you talking about it? Why did you write this? These kinds of responses are very unnerving, to sort of like face every single time you finish your work. So as you use the concept map and you improve your use of the concept map, you will find that your writing is also improved. And as I said, the advantages are, you can sort of like see the structure of your arguments much easily, and you can improve also the way you brainstorm your ideas. Brainstorming is a very, very important tool when you're writing. Let me come to the class. I hear. Okay, so sorry, Rowan, I missed that. Uh, Brainstorming is a very important tool for. improving your writing. So if you have an idea and you can just write whatever comes to your mind, this is where uh, the concept map helps you to focus on the ideas that are relevant and the ideas that are not relevant. So it helps you to focus, as I say. I can't emphasize that enough. And you modify your ideas, you refine them, you strengthen them, and your revision it becomes much better, so to speak. And this is an example, ways to improve your grammar. I got this from Education Mind. So this is the topic, and then we have a few ideas branching off, here and here. So this will be your paragraphs basically, and each one of these will have a different subtopic. So for example, you want to improve your grammar, read or check your spelling, use active verbs, check your wordiness, practice maybe how you use the language. You need to know something, so you need to read and so on. So the concept maps gives you a visual representation. It's not just uh, a nice picture. It's a very important way to organize your thinking. An organized mind is a very organized, makes an organized writer. Um, the other thing is you need to be able to analyze and evaluate the evidence. So when you are gathering information, you can't just pick and choose whatever you want. You have to make sure that everything is related. So you have to be critical. And this is what critical means, right? You have to ask the question, what am I writing about? Does this apply to it? And you need to be able to check that the information is reliable, of course, and valid and significant to your work. And the last one is you need to be able to determine the relevance of the question and how it will be important to your argument. Many people ignore the idea of the research question. They think a question is, what is your name? How are you doing? No, the question is what will help you to write. So you start with a question and then you see how much you can write about this. So, most of us who are uh, who read a lot, who read who consume research, we know that when we're reading something, there's a lot of critical thinking behind it. So as you ask the question, the writer has answered your question. So you're reading and you're sort of interacting with the writer. So you need to be able to analyze the content that you're writing about in such a way that you help the reader understand your thinking. So this is what this refers to. So how do you evaluate sources? Well, you have to think about the person who's writing, the place they're publishing at, what are the citations that they're using, and how relevant and reliable the information is. So, you can have a journal that's that just came out, and as we know, there are so many journals asking us to send out publications today, and then you have an established journal, which are also a bit different from some of the uh, slightly not so old journals out there. So you have so many different sources of information uh, that you can use to access uh, evidences that you can use, or materials that you can use for your writing. So what I mean is, you know, if you want someone to read your work, you have to publish it. If you want your teacher, for example, to read your work, most students know that this teacher is harsh. He checks the spelling, he checks the grammar. So what do? You go and use a spell checker to make sure that your spelling is correct, right? Now you can use a good spell checker like the one in Microsoft Word, for example, or you can use an online one, which might not be so reliable. So reliability means you need to use something that everybody knows is useful. Everybody will tell you use Microsoft Word. It will check the spelling for you. But of course, as you write more and more, you will discover there are more editors out there that you can use to help you edit your work. But the idea is you need to be able to know which one is credible, which one is reliable, because we're dealing with the real world. There are many people who just want uh, your money out there. So you need to be able to evaluate the information also. Now, this is an example of a good source and a bad source here. So we have a peer-reviewed research article which is titled "The Impact of Climate Change on Coastal Ecosystems," which is published in the Journal of Environmental Science in 2021. This article was authored by Dr. Sarah Johnson, and she is a renowned marine biologist, and it presents findings from a well-designed and funded study conducted over 3 years. I just made this up, by the way. Um, but if it exists, I'm sorry. uh, is this a good source or a bad source? If I was just to read this, would you say this is a good source, ladies and gentlemen? It's a good source. Thank you, Amani. I believe it's a good source too. Thank you, Dr. Shamrani. And we have further. It's a good source. Good. Leah says it's good. So most of you would think this is a good source. Yeah. Thank you very much, Rowan. Shukran, Amru. Rania thinks it's good. Why do you guys think it's good? Is it because it's got all that information, like, the journal's name, the date, the doctor who wrote it, and who the doctor is? These are the keys. These are the keywords. It's useful. Thank you, Amal. It looks professional. Yeah. It makes you think that whoever wrote this is a professional. All right. Now let's compare it with. It's organized too. That's right. Let's compare it with the next one, which is a blog by about global warming, which is talking about myths debunked by an anonymous user from a personal website. The blog lacks citations. It relies on a lot of anecdotal evidence and contains numerous spelling and grammatical errors. Right, so I don't even need to ask. Right, everybody knows that there's something missing, and it's awful. This could be my blog. Everybody thinks this is awful. It could be something that I use, when I'm away from the college or the university, and I just sit down and I just want to type without thinking about the information. You know what I mean? So this could be anybody's blog. Exactly. It's non-academic. This is the point. So because it's non-academic, you can't use it for academic purposes. Thank you very much. Who's this? Uh, I don't know. I don't want to butcher your name. Is it Yasser? I can't see that.
يسرى يسرى.
Yusra, thank you so much. Yusra, thank you, Yusra. So it's you need to think like we do in the academy. Basically, this is the point here. Now, another thing to pick up on is the themes or the patterns that you want to consider with your evidence. So is it reoccurring? Is it something that keeps coming up? Is there a pattern? Because a pattern could mean one thing if you're looking at numbers, if you're counting with numbers. So a pattern could be, a lot, a little, many. But if you're not counting and you're thinking about words, a pattern could be something else completely different here. So it could be maybe similarities. People think this is good, or maybe people think this is bad. So this is there's a difference in how we see patterns coming up again and again and again. These days, there's something in the United Kingdom, for example, they're trying to clamp down on vaping. There was a pattern here that I noticed that they want younger people to stop using these cigarettes, these electronic cigarettes. They call it vapes. Uh, Now the pattern is young people are smoking a lot more than before, and they notice some sort of like health factors that go into it. Now, this is a small example. It could be something to do, you could ask your students, or you could be asked to write about it. Now, what kind of pattern do you see, even without reading the academic stuff? When you go and check the newspapers, you should be able to see a pattern. It could be with global warming, for example. The world has gotten hotter, and you don't have to go too far to know that there's something going on in the world. The weather has changed. Again, if you talk to different people, they will tell you, yeah, it's kind of hot. You don't need to do some sort of survey, but you can understand what's going on. You see, just by talking to people, and that's different from counting, right? Again, you can identify the what's common or what's different. So what is the same or what is different to help you build your arguments. Again, like I said, it depends on how you look at the information. You could also group ideas together because you want to see how to make your writing more cohesive, right? So uh, noticing patterns is another way of helping you improve your writing. So you can argue and discuss things by saying, a lot of people are noticing, the weather is changing due to this. The United Nations global warming has issued something due to this. Because the world is very organic. It's very when I say organic, I mean it's not like before. Where things are so detached. Everything is connected these days, especially with social media. So it's very easy to notice the patterns and things that are going on in the world. Here's an exercise to help you understand what I mean. When you work on research related to climate change, for example, you can read 5 articles and you can notice the common themes and patterns related to the impact of climate change. So it could be something related to the coastal regions, the rise in sea levels, the increase in storms and floods and things like that. Habitat loss. So it could be animals are no longer grazing. It could be it's just too much wetlands or too much mud. So this is one way to help you understand how you can see the patterns in what you're reading, and make sure what you're reading is related, of course, to the topic or the question that you're asking, your research question, because then you will be able to narrow or get these different ideas together so that you can see where the patterns are coming from. So reading is very closely related to writing. So this is why I included this exercise here to help. Now, I mentioned the idea of your question or your topic. Here, I want to focus more on what I mean by the thesis statement here, which is connected to it. So, a strong thesis statement will help you by creating the meat in your burger. This is the base of your pizza, if you like. This is the backbone of your argument. This is what will need flesh from your argument. So the bone, just like we have a skeleton in our bodies, it holds us together. The thesis statement, the thing that you're writing about, is what will be the main drive that will need answering in your writing. So you need to be clear and you need to be specific when you think about how you want to position your argument or how you want to defend your idea in your using your thesis statement. So you make sure that the evidence also, you see, if you have a very good idea to write about, then it will help you also find a good sort of like evidence to back up what you're writing about. The two of them just go together. You know, uh, Here's an exercise that will help. Again, this is to do with using technology, for example, in the classroom. Uh, you collected all your articles and your surveys and you observed what's going on in the classroom. Now you want to evidence that the technology has a positive outcome on the students and it also improves their learning. So what you want to do is you want to write a clear and maybe concise thesis statement to show how your findings and your arguments, for example, connect to each other. So it could be something like this example I've got here. Technology in the classroom improves learning outcomes and enhances student engagement, making it an essential part of modern education. Excuse me. So uh, that last bit here, making it an essential part of modern education. This is connected to uh, what I am doing when I write. So I look at the whole picture that comes at the end. So it could be education for uh, maybe foundation year students. It could be for nursing students. It could be for whatever the general idea is, the general topic is. But working backwards, you can see how uh, the education here has something to do with students, and it has something to do with learning outcomes, and it has something to do with classroom, and then we have technology. These little nouns that you see here come together with little words like improve, uh, make, enhance, and I'm careful not to use words like this. Impact. When you're writing, you don't want to use impact in your introductions or unless you have some kind of evidence. Your impact goes in your conclusion. So you've done everything. Now you want to show the effect. So you don't want to start talking about the effect of something until you've already established there's something to that has an impact on it. So uh, this is what we're doing here. Now, you need to also organize your supporting points and your contents. What do I mean by this? Organizing is to do with what we said earlier about critical thinking. If you know where the first idea is going to go, and then the next idea is going to go, and the third idea is going to go, then it's very easy for the person who's reading to pick up on uh, what you are doing after completing the evaluation form. Okay, sorry. I just came into the classroom and I'm reading what people are writing on the top there. Okay, so being able to organize our writing is very, very important, and it's one of the things that we almost forget. After we finish writing, what you want to be able to do is to check and make sure that everything is organized. I'll explain this, by using this. For example, I've written about what I want to write about, but has anyone also said something else about the idea? If you were to write 250 words, for example, okay, so I would say 50 words, this will be in my conclusion. 100 words will be about one side of the argument. Another 100 words will be about the other side of the argument. You see what I mean? So you need to be able to organize your writing so that you know where all these different ideas are coming from. Give or take, maybe you could say 25 could be for the conclusion and 25 could be the introduction. So just by doing this, I'm showing you how to physically actually uh, uh, map out what goes into your intro and what goes into your conclusion, and between them is the body, where you have one side of the argument and another side of the argument. This helps to make your argument very, very presentable, even sensible, so to speak, because before you talk about whether you agree or disagree, because this is what you do when you argue. You want to show you agree with something or you want to show you disagree with something. You need to present the arguments. And critical thinking means what? You present it in such a way that you have shown the other side of the argument. I'll give you an example. Most of my students, before they travel to America, they used to come to me and ask me, Ibrahim, uh, can you help us with our writing? We want to do some IELTS or TOEFL exam. I'm like, sure. Here's your topic. So imagine 10 years ago, I'm asking them, write about women driving in Saudi Arabia. I know it was illegal then, but the point is, I wanted them to write. Now, most of them would say, "Oh, we can't," or "It's haram," or And I say to them, "Listen, if you write that, the guy who's going to market or the lady who's going to market is gonna fail you. You need to be able to present your argument so that it could be about music, for example, or it could be about anything that read it or even riding a bicycle. You don't have to ride a bicycle. You don't have to read, but you should be able to present the argument so that you can say, well, some people say that you don't need to read, you can listen, and other people say, reading improves your thinking, and it also improves babies, for example, when you read to them, as they get older, they become more intelligent. So, present the argument, present the counter argument, and this is what I'm saying here. By being able to show that you have a good understanding of the topic, is a very good way to make your argument very effective. So, to conclude, what I've been talking about is how to understand your audience, how to define your research question, how to gather and analyze evidence, and also how to develop clear statements to help you build critically stimulating, motivating, and interesting writing. I'm going to stop here because we have about 10 minutes. If you have any questions or if you want to contribute to my uh, presentation, I would love to hear from you to make my world even better. So thank you for listening to me. I will be quiet for a bit.
Thank you for the outstanding performance as usual and as always, Dr. Ibrahim, mashallah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
You're welcome.
if you have any questions, you can use your mics or you can write in the chat box, and please feel free. Before this, I'd like just to remind you, for those especially interested in getting their certificates, please fill in the evaluation form before you leave the blackboard, please. These are four links for the evaluation form. And when you fill in the evaluation form, please make sure that you fill it completely and correctly and you submit it. And write the name that you would like to have it on your certificate, please, as it is, and the email of the university. Other websites and links, as you can see, are for the YouTube channel registration, the website of the Academic Writing Center. And yes, Abir, the workshop is recorded And inshallah, in 2 or 3 hours from now, you will find it on the YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody, and thank you again and again, Dr. Ibrahim. Inshallah, we'll meet you again and again, and we learn from your experiences in such excellent field. Your questions, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to ask, are there any examples of writings where the writers didn't use critical thinking, where there are inconsistencies, where the arguments are incoherent, so that we can avoid those things?
Would you hear the question, Dr. Garba? Dr. Ibrahim, are you still there? Dr. Ibrahim, can you hear us? No, it seems that either Dr. Ibrahim is disconnected or has left, though we have 5 more minutes. Hadil, yeah, use the first one for the certificate, which says evaluation form, workshop evaluation form. Dr. Ibrahim, can you hear us?
Sorry, Dr. Kamal, that takes us back to the Blackboard Ultra link that we are here now.
The first one?
Yeah, the first one. That takes us back to this session.
Okay,
Please check
Dr.
that.
Basim, Dr. Basim, Dr. Yahya, you're with us. Can you help?
All right, I'm back. I heard the question.
Oh, you heard the question. Good,
I heard
good,
the question.
good.
I can see you.
I was about to mark you absent, Dr. Ibrahim.
Yeah, this
Good,
is what
good,
happens with our students, isn't it? You know,
good, Garba.
you ask a question and then they say to you, "I got disconnected," and there's nothing you can do. You know, I heard everything, but I just couldn't do anything.
Good, good.
I couldn't
Alhamdulillah.
respond.
Good.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can use. You know, if you use, is the person who asked me the question, are you still in the classroom? Are you still in Blackboard? Okay. The question was, can we find examples of uh, writings that show that the writer wasn't critical? Okay, they didn't use any critical thinking in their writing. Okay. Now, there are two ways you can answer this question. The first one is look at the sample of work from your students. You know, any teacher who teaches will say to you, "This is the kind of work that I want. This is outstanding. This is, you know, mediocre or average or adequate, and this is bad." Oh, thank you very much, Amani. All right. So when you are thinking about improving your writing, Amani, one of the things you can do is ask your teacher, what do I need to get an A? Okay, and then you work towards that. So there are criteria. For example, it could be you need to answer the question. It could be you need more examples, or maybe you gave one example, you didn't give enough examples. It could be you didn't think about the question from another angle. You know what I mean? You only thought about it from what we call from the surface, from a very not very deep way of looking at it. So your teacher will show you. For example, if you are doing something in medicine, they will say to you, you know, these questions that you're asking are related to this particular field. You're not asking the patient deeper questions to find out exactly what's wrong with them. You know, so there are scripts also, depending on the field that you're in. So if you're in medicine, we have scripts that we use to make sure that the kind of questions you're asking are deep enough to find out what's wrong with the patient. Now, in the same way, when you're writing also, the kind of ways that you approach your responses need to show that you read enough, you thought about the issue enough, you found examples of evidence enough, you know, you found the other side of the argument, you had enough arguments that people will say, yeah, this is related to it. So, for example, today people say, when you look at the pandemic, for example, they say, oh, but the pandemic is something that was not relevant, and you shouldn't have taken the vaccine. The government is saying you should have three shots, but some people online are saying you don't need to have a vaccine. Ask them, where's your evidence? And they will likely say to you, but he told me, or but she told me, or this doctor said it. There's a video on YouTube. Okay, keep digging, and this is how you will find the issue of critical thinking not being met. Is there enough proof to answer the question? Are there enough examples of this particular question? Exactly. So if you're a law student, for example, one of the things you should do, or you should be able to do, is not only ask a good question, but make sure that there's evidence to support this. There's precedence. We call this precedence, right, in law. So is there a precedence for this? Is it something unique? Is it something original? Is it something that's new? Or, the sky's the limit. But in terms of your classrooms, if you're a student, the first point is ask your teacher to give you examples of good work, bad work, and excellent work, and then you have to make sure that you meet this. If you're doing IELTS, for example, or TOEFL or something like this, we have many examples of what's a good work or what's a bad work. The first thing you can do is look at the criteria for writing. We have many ideas to show us whether our writing is useful or not. So I hope I answered the question. That's a very, very good question.
More questions, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, Mr. Yahya, yes, I tried it. It's working well now. Thank you very much for the help. Okay, if there are no questions now, it is 8:01 and the time is over. Another reminder about our next workshop, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be about Chat GPT in academic writing. Advantages, disadvantages, and so on, which is a new topic, Thank you all for your participation, your interaction, your assistance. Good, thank you, Ragad. Yes.
Thank you very much for having me, Dr. Kamal.
Thank you. Have a nice evening. Inshallah, we'll meet you again and again. We need to learn more from you, mashallah,
Inshallah. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Dr. Treasure, our treasure, wallah, mashallah.
It's my pleasure too. Here's
King
something.
Abdul Aziz University's treasure, wallah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Shukran, Dr.
Thank you very much. Shukran. Right. Thank you very much.
All right. Assalamu.
Good night. See you. Have a nice time.
You too.
Salam. If somebody is interested in a soft copy of the presentation, you can email us and I'll take permission from Dr. Garba. If he does not mind, I can send it to you via email.